Killis Almond, president of Killis Almond Architects, PC in San Antonio. Professional experience in preservation extends over 38 years in his professional practice as a registered architect, concentrating on the preservation of historic resources and cultural resource management spans the last 35 years. He's undertaken a number of design and construction projects involving new construction as well as restoration and construction projects involving adaptive use of historic structures, some of them you'll know. He has also served as a project architect on a number of theaters throughout the United States. Highly experienced in the physical investigation of buildings, he has produced a number of historic structure reports, cyclical maintenance programs, and adaptive use feasibility studies, also historic preservation plans that are very important in cities like San Antonio. Some of the projects include the 1884 Gothic Adobe Monastery in Stanton, Texas, and the 1948 Art Deco Alameda Theater right here in San Antonio, Texas. Please welcome Killis Almond, FAIA.
That's why I wear glasses. First of all, I want to point out that I'm not one of the young emerging architects. I'm one of the old fart architects. This is going to be fun. Tano Lucchese was the son of Sam Lucchese, the famous bootmaker of the Lucchese family, and operated theaters in San Antonio, beginning with the Dixie Theater in 1915 on East Houston, the first West Side Theater, the Zaragoza Theater, the El Nacional Theater, the Progreso Theater, the Azteca Theater on El Paso Street, and the Guadalupe Theater on Guadalupe. The family founded the Zaragoza Amusement Company, which franchised the movie and the vaudeville business in San Antonio. The Alameda Theater became the flagship of Zaragoza Amusement Company. The property was purchased in 1945. However, construction was delayed and continued slowly until the World War II ended and the shortage of building materials was ended. Tano Lucchese, or Giatano Lucchese, and the Zaragoza Amusement Company, N. Strauss Nafach, architect, and Victor Prasso, contractor, were the team that constructed the Alameda Theater project. Now imagine this, we have a first-generation Italian-American, a Roman Catholic contractor, and a Jewish architect. And they're building, think about it, they're building a Spanish language vaudeville house 20 years after vaudeville was dead. Only in San Antonio. Strauss Nafach was a very close friend of Tano Lucchese and traveled with Tano to Mexico City. And they looked at theaters there to give them ideas on how they were going to do the Alameda. The Alameda Theater cost $1.6 million in 1947. Architect Nafach was a local San Antonio resident and began his architectural career in 1928. His earliest work concerned residential architecture and low-income housing. The Alameda Theater was his last major project, and he died June the 17th, 1948, just before the Alameda opened. The design elements in the theater are taken directly from his sketches, and the plexiglass railings in the entry and the mezzanines in the theater are etched with his tropical scenes from Nafach sketches during the trips between Mexico and San Antonio with Tano. The cornerstone was laid in 1946, and the building officially welcomed the Mexican Consul General in 1947. The Alameda was also the culmination of Tano Lucchese's career with the Zaragoza Amusement Company. He spent 25 years in the presentation of Mexican motion pictures in San Antonio. The building was dedicated to the betterment, development, and the trade between Texas and Mexico. The inclusion of Mexican Consul General in the Casa de Mexico, the building, along with the Mexican International Commerce Travel Agency, the Mexican Chamber of Commerce, and the South Texas Chamber of Commerce, lends credibility to Tano's original vision. The Alameda is one of the largest grand movie palaces dedicated to the presentation of the Spanish language films and performing arts. Many performers from Mexican cinema performed on the stage at the Alameda, and this included Pedro Infante, Cantinflas, Maria Felix, and Vicente Fernandez. I encourage all of you to stop right below downstairs. Below this ladder is a small theater room down there. You'll see pictures of these individuals. You'll also see at the entry of that the cast aluminum sculpture that goes into the lobby of the Alameda Theater. built by the artist Tehran, San Antonio artist who did that sculpture. The major problem with the Alameda being located downtown was parking. The true problem with all of downtown theaters throughout the United States was parking. This happened after World War II, when the automobile put transportation control in the hands of individuals driving cars. The advent of drive-in movies in the 1950s and 60s removed a large population from the downtown single-screen movie houses. Multi-screen drive-in movies led the way to multi-screen indoor movies, and the Alameda was remodeled into a triplex movie house. However, the large seating capacity and its location contributed to the rebirth failure. The second rebirth of the Alameda began in 1996. The goal of the city of San Antonio was to save the historic structure and to create a new performing arts venue for our citizens. The organization that controlled the Alameda Theater was the Centro Alameda, Inc. The organization started with a master plan for the theater, but eventually focused attention on a new museum for Latino art. Some work was initially completed by the Alameda, and this included the facade restoration, new roof, interior infrastructure, and remodeling an infrastructure part of the Casa de Mexico. The current restoration plan is to develop following the approval of the county bond issue as it developed and provided $6 million toward the Alameda project. With the closing of the Museo Alameda and the Centro Alameda, the city of San Antonio acquired a new organization to take over the theater. The Alameda Theater, Inc. currently controls the development of the theater. The construction project began in January of 2012, and approximately 50% of the bond money has been spent toward the construction of a new stage house and shell of the adjacent annex. The second phase of the Alameda project will be the completion of the first floor of the Casa de Mexico building. The Henry Ford Learning Institute is constructing a new high school for the design arts, which will be inserted in the upper 3 floors. The first floor of the Casa will be rehabilitated into a reception area and toilet spaces for the school above. The second phase is approximately 20% complete and is being financed with city funding. The anticipation opening date of the high school is August 2013. The third phase of the Alameda is expected to be the finish out of the stage and the annex structure. The Alameda Theater, Inc. organization will continue to develop fundraising programs and to develop a business model which will operate the Alameda Theater and the Casa de Mexico building. It will be a major addition to continue the revitalization of downtown San Antonio. It will also create a special theatrical venue to expand the cultural arts and programs into areas which are currently not fully served. The most important aspect of rebirth of the Alameda Theater is the creation of a new business in a vacant building. Revive Alameda.
Thank you, Killis. First of all, to cleanse the palate for a moment, what's Killis?
When I was born, my parents put "kill this" on the crib.
Yeah, right. Okay. Now, this is interesting that you're doing this in this building and explaining this whole thing. You said the high school is going to open in August of this year.
Yes.
And how much of the theater, when you go in, is going to be like the original theater? You can go in and watch the theater because all this other stuff is in there.
Well, the theater will not be open with the high school.
Right, but I mean, eventually.
But right now, as you saw, some of the elements of the theater, the really artistic and the spaces of the original theater are still intact. And there's more than enough information there to restore that to its original intention. You saw the blacklight murals. They may be the largest blacklight murals in the United States. And they are something that are very unique. The only blacklight murals that have probably been done in modern times was by me about 2 years ago in another theater, but that's another story.
Yeah, that is. But wait, so you touched there before we break on the third rail of development in San Antonio, and that's parking downtown.
Parking downtown.
And is that still a problem? Now, it's Parking Tuesday, as we are, Free Parking Tuesday, but what hurt that development before? And what's going to make this one different? What's going to make this work?
Every vacant historic building is in search of a new use. And to create a new use, you really have to reconsider. There is no vaudeville anymore for a reason. And there are no single-screen movie houses anymore for a reason. And those reasons, you wouldn't necessarily put it back the way it was because it failed. So the new idea is to create a new performing arts that's going to fill a niche that is very underserved right now in San Antonio.
And is there enough parking downtown?
There's not enough parking downtown. If you take a look at downtown, when the city started putting in the city parking garages, almost all the demolition of buildings stopped almost immediately because there wasn't need for a parking space anymore. The city should continue that process, and definitely on the near west side is definitely a place that we need a good city parking garage, and that will explode that area just as it did the rest of downtown.
And the last question, is that in the works? Is it possible, or is that still way down the road?
I do not know where that is. I don't know of anyone planning that. There's a lot of planning going on right now along the San Pedro Creek, and hopefully they will be looking at things like development, rebirth of that creek and that waterway, and hopefully the rebirth of all of the historic buildings on the near west side.
All right, well, thanks very much and good luck with it. Killis Almond, now we're going to take a break. We'll be back in 10, 15 minutes.